Good evening. Welcome to the Greater Lafayette Holocaust Remembrance virtual discussion with Holocaust survivor Oscar Singer. I am Sarah Powley. I am the chair of the Greater Lafayette Holocaust Remembrance Committee. We are 20 individuals, all volunteers in the Greater Lafayette community who are dedicated to the mission of this organization: to continue awareness of the Nazis' war against the Jews from 1933 to 1945, to honor the victims and survivors of the Holocaust, and to promote individual, community, and media responsibility for combating the forces of prejudice, discrimination, and hatred today. Our program, Surviving Then and Now, was postponed last spring. We are pleased that we can bring you Oscar Singer and his daughter, Lee Fischbach, to you this evening. And we are grateful to our sponsors and the many individuals that have made this evening's event possible. First, Mr. Singer, with the help of his daughter, will tell us his story in a film made earlier this month. Following the presentation, there will be a live question and answer session facilitated by Professor and committee member Rebecca Klein-Pasheva, Professor of History at Purdue University and Director of the Human Rights Program at Purdue. Again, thank you for joining us tonight. I'm honored to present Oscar Singer and Lee Fischbach, who will be speaking to us from their home in Pittsburgh.
Hello, my name is Lee Fischbach, and I'm here to introduce my father, Oscar Singer. My father is an extraordinary man who survived a world of demons and genocide, but still remains an honest, decent man who always finds time to help others in times of need and to be dignified and honorable in the face of despair and darkness. Daddy was born in 1925 in Radomysl Wielki, a little village in the south of Poland, with roughly 350 families with a Jewish population prior to the Holocaust of 1,422. The Jewish people made up 75% of the townspeople, and they lived in the Galicia region. He grew up in a religious Hasidic family of the, you could say it better than I can. Can you pronounce that, Daddy? Can you pronounce?
Hasidic, I mean.
No, Grodzikers?
Grodziske Chosid, you know, they have like they call
different things like Lubavitch, or it was his sect that he was born into. He had 3 brothers, Jacob, Alter, Abraham, and 1 little sister, Rachel. Now, what you see here is a picture of the piano and a picture of my father, and I actually have the picture right here. And this is a picture that has always been on my piano for as long as possible. I always thought it was perfectly normal that I had a picture of my father in regular street clothes and then actually another one in a prison uniform. And I never really thought anything about it until one of my friends came to visit and they asked, why do you have a picture of your father in a prison uniform? And just always seemed so normal. The Holocaust has always been a part of our life, and it wasn't anything that we hid, but it was something that wasn't discussed very much, but it was always part of our life. And I really just didn't know any different. And that's just something that we all lived with in our family. So his first language was Yiddish, which is a combination of German and Hebrew. He spoke Polish when he went to school. His family were the kosher butchers of the village and were very religious, and like most everyone else in the village, very poor. There was no train station, doctor, or dentist. Every Sabbath, people would come to his family home, and my grandfather would give townspeople and the rabbi meat for their Shabbat table. Shabbat was a magical time for the family, just like you would have seen in Fiddler on the Roof. However, the first time my father saw the movie Fiddler on the Roof, he said that he never saw a home that rich or large in his village. His home was a little cottage with stone floors, 4 rooms, and with kindling wood on the roof. Every winter, it was the brother's job, mostly yours, right, Dad? To gather the wood from the roof and bring it downstairs to keep the fires lit. There was no indoor plumbing or bathroom. Amongst the hard living, Daddy was happy and content. He went to the public school and went to Cheder, which is the religious school, every evening. My grandfather was a God-fearing man who believed in tradition and taught Oscar and his brothers and sisters to be strong, hardworking, and to believe in God and honor the commandments. Oscar's father was also very, very religious. As so, he felt it was his responsibility to stay and take care of his ailing father. So he was the only one of his 5 siblings that stayed in Poland. There were so many pogroms, killings, and anti-Semitism in the 1900s that his aunts and uncles couldn't take the violence anymore and left for America or Shanghai before World War II. Daddy's father, Joshua, which is Yahushua, believed that the Mashiach, the Messiah, would come and end their suffering. Oscar's father told him to recite a Hebrew prayer every day called Shira HaMalach. This would give the boys strength, and the prayer would be their personal private solace for the tyranny and dehumanization from the Nazis. Throughout the years, 1939 to 1945, when my father was incarcerated as a prisoner, his brothers, Abraham and Alter, would pray silently, just like his father told them, and then they would say the Shira HaMalach prayer. And this gave my dad hope, as he was reminded of his father's kindness and love every day while he prayed for the suffering to end. The Germans came to Daddy's village September 1939 when he was 14 years old and were able to defeat the Polish armies within days of occupation. Germany crossed into Poland at 4:45 a.m. Poland declared war on Germany. Daddy's older brother Jacob was a Polish soldier and was the only one in the village that was killed in the tank war near Warsaw. Oscar's family was devastated by the news, but their only solace would be that Jacob would be spared the humiliation and terror that the Nazis would rain upon the remaining family members.
We couldn't do anything about it. It was in the morning when they came in like they say they have a war with Poland, so they fight with Poland. In mine, I was a little boy. How can Poland fight with an armies like that with Germany? Because they don't have any panzers. They have panzers, they have tanks, they have all motorcycles, they have all big cars and trucks. Poland didn't have anything. Why didn't they have anything? Because I had my brother was in the army in Lviv, but he went to Warsaw. He was the only one, 6 Jewish boys. They were Jewish, but they called them to the army. This was before, and he was in Lviv. Now it's Ukraine. You heard about the word Lviv. That's a town in Ukraine. So, and that's he was there in the service for 2 years. Yet they took him to the service, and I didn't even know. Then they go to fight there. And then they went near Warsaw. There he fell down because he was in the tank things there. That's all I can tell you. And I don't know, since then, there was 4 or 5 boys came back, but he's the only one, but he never made it.
In 1939, as soon as the Nazis took over the village, they terrorized, began looting, humiliating Jewish people on the street, beating them up, and rounding up the men and young boys and forcing them to work for them. As you can see in the pictures, this is actually pictures that I was able to find on the internet from Radomysl Wielki, and pictures of the destroyed synagogues and where the townspeople were being herded up, and the mayor had asked everyone to get together and do whatever they needed to do in order to try to keep them as safe as possible at the beginning. One time, Daddy's father was praying, and the Germans caught them and beat him up. The Germans would not tolerate any private or public Jewish praying. The Germans told the Jewish boys in the village that if they would willingly work for them, they would spare their families. He and his brothers were going to run away to the forest, but the promise of the Nazis and the boys' responsibilities to their parents and younger sisters convinced them to turn back and to submit to slave labor. As you can see in the picture, all of the Jews in the village were forced to wear a Jewish star armband. From September 1939 until 1941, the Nazis grabbed Oscar and his brothers on the street, and every day they were forced to work in the forest, cutting trees, stones, carrying logs, and clearing open space in Plaszow Forest. The Gestapo SS would hit them hard with rubber whips or hoses so that they would move faster and faster, and the Jewish workers were beaten just because they were Jewish. They had minimal food, worked in freezing conditions, performed slave labor, which consisted of beatings, constant terrorizing, and death by the Nazis. In 1941, when he was 14, Oscar and his two brothers, Alter and Abraham, were forced from their family and worked at Mielic in an airplane factory where they made German bombers and manufactured the fighter plane HE-297. The Jewish boys were thrown into trucks, moved into dirty, crowded barracks in Mielic, and were never allowed to come home again.
In Mielic, when we went to the factory, so they had to pick us up. All the younger people, we went to things that they say. Then we went to Mielic and we came back for the last few weeks, back and forth. We came back in the night, go home and we go to work. Go home and go to work. After a while, after a few weeks, they say, if the younger people will go to work in Mielic without any troubles, then the older people, like the mother and father and my little sister, they can stay at house. See, after 5 or 6 weeks, it stopped. Then they say you're going to have to be locked up, and then they start troubles with him that they didn't let you go home anymore, so you have to stay there. And then they get some barracks there to stay and work there, whatever they can work, and never could go home. So, and the family says they're going to stay home. They're supposed to stay home there and then be heard from the other people who work in Mielec, the airplane factory there. They were working there, the other people, even Germans, lots of Germans or Polish people. Then they tell you they have some ghettos, you know. The Jewish have a ghetto, and they all get them to get us together, and they took them away. We didn't know where they. From then on, we didn't know where to go, where they went, or what to do with them. I can't tell you anything about it because I don't know. They took them away. And later we found out that they went over there. Some of them went to Auschwitz. Some of them went to different. They have different in different concentration camps. That's what they took them. I don't know. And I have no idea where they went, my parents, at all. All I know is from my brother, but I with him, 2 brothers. We were together. That's all I can tell.
My dad was always a big, brawny, strong man and had difficulty working with the little airplane parts. They thought he was the saboteur and often beat him and threatened to kill him. One day they moved him to another part of the factory and he began to carry airplane parts on his shoulder, and the Nazis would scream obscenities that hit him with rubber hose or a whip just to terrorize him and to instill their control and dominance. From 1939 to 1945, every day the Germans would yell at the Jewish prisoners. And Daddy, could you say what they used to yell at you?
They used to say to German, you have to work. You
say it in German?
In Germany, they call it, you must kapieren wie ein Hund. You have to suffer like a dog.
So Daddy, from 1939 into 1945, heard that every day.
I heard it the most at the time.
So Daddy's youngest brother, Abraham, was thin, tall, and agile, and was very adept at assembling the airplane parts. He was spared Oscar's back-breaking work, but later, the constant proximity with the glue and chemicals would hurt his lungs and weaken him. His older brother, Alter, worked at the farms at Mielic. One day, my dad and Abraham came home from work, and they were told by their fellow prisoners that their older brother, Alter, was injured on a farm machine and was shot by the Nazis. Now it was just the 2 brothers clinging for life and praying for escape. One time, the Jewish prisoners planned an escape in the middle of the night. Everyone was ready. However, someone overheard the Jewish prisoners. The Nazis were waiting for them at the gates. Every day after that, there was an appel, which is a roll call at 6 a.m. in the morning, where the Jewish prisoners were left outside, sometimes naked in the freezing cold for hours. If one Jewish prisoner had escaped in the middle of the night, the Nazis would grab maybe up to 10 Jewish prisoners, depending on their mood, and immediately shoot them in front of all the prisoners. In Mielic, my father was tattooed with the KL, which you see there in the slide, which means concentration lager, which is German for concentration camp. Jewish prisoners in Mielic, Vuketska and Budzin, were given this specific brand. The Jewish prisoners were the only ones that were branded, so that even if the Jewish prisoners ran away, they could be found. They were also branded to be reminded that they were now Nazi property, no better than animals, and had no identity or free will of their own. My dad used to tell me that the Nazis would be standing over them with their German shepherds, and they had better not wince or complain when they were being tattooed, or they would have the they would have the dogs savagely bite and maul them. After hearing the story as a little girl, I became deathly afraid of dogs and could not even look at a German Shepherd. However, my father never seemed to be afraid of anything, even the stray German Shepherds in our Denver neighborhood. However, when Oscar told me how he was branded, he would become sad. I don't know if y'all can see it. I don't know. Can you see that? Yes, a little bit. Can you all see that?
Okay. Yeah.
However, when Oscar did tell me about how he was branded, he would become sad, and he wished that he could have removed the KO from his arms, so that he would not have to be reminded every day of his horrible life as a slave under the Nazis. He did remove his numbers from his left forearm after the war that he received at Auschwitz, as they were not as deep as the KL tattoo. However, a doctor told him that the KL was so deeply embedded in his skin that he could never remove the letters, and he would have to live with those memories every day. Consequently, my dad always wears long sleeves so that people won't ask them questions about his tattoo. And so he doesn't have to look at the KL staring him all day long. In mid-1943, Oscar and Abraham were forced to work at Wielicka Salt Mine. That was a horrible experience, where they would be transported at gunpoint in a pitch black shaft and work from morning to night mining salt. They never knew if they would be allowed to live or be shot and left in the mine. I had actually visited Wielicka maybe 4 years ago, and it's a World Heritage Site. And when I was being told, they were discussing everything with us, and when they asked us, they were so proud of everything because they said, oh, we never had slave labor in this camp. We're so proud of this beautiful, beautiful salt mine. And I raised my hand and I said, that's not possible. I know that my dad was slave labor there. And they said, no, we never had any prisoners, certainly not in World War II. So afterwards, she walked up to me and she says, okay, maybe your father must have been an engineer and we did some private things there. And I said, no, my dad wasn't an engineer. He was 15 or 16 years old. And she said, well, I don't believe there was ever any prisoners. I've lived here all my life. And I know that he was a prisoner there. And subsequently, I've done a lot of research. And indeed, he was a prisoner there. And it was one of your more horrible experiences, wouldn't you say, Daddy?
Yeah.
When you were at Wielicka, it was a pretty scary experience.
Yeah, it was a scary experience because you went down to the ground. You don't know where you're going. You don't know what you do. All you don't do anything. I didn't do mostly the work. All we don't do cleaning. You know what I mean? Cleaning up that mess. The more you clean, the more it's messy. You know, like in a hole, you're very deep. I don't know how.
It was scary all the time.
Scary when you go down, and you was afraid that the elevator fall down. They didn't care about that. You know, we just came down there, things there. So there was.
It was a terrible experience.
Yes.
In late 1943. Abraham and Oscar were transported from Wielicka to Auschwitz concentration camp. They were transported by cattle cars.
The cattle car at Auschwitz, they put you in there. I saw right away in the front before I get in. No water, no nothing, just put you in there, put you like a dog. It's like they cattle, at least they get a little hay, you can get something to eat, the cattle. They didn't worry about that, something to eat. They put you in there, fill it up there, go on in the car, and that's all it is. And we were driving. Baby were driving. We didn't know where we go.
And there was nowhere to go to the bathroom.
No
water.
Everything, no food, no water. They didn't want to. We were driving for 7 days. Things they were all right. And that's all it is. I can tell you.
Remember when you came off the cattle cars, how you felt? Or what it was?
We couldn't even walk. We were all dumped up all together.
Oh, you were all cramped up together.
You couldn't take certain saver like you got you straightened out your feet. The saver in the car you sit in.
How many people do you think were in a car at one time?
Oh, it's packed. It's all packed. It's like this.
It was like packed. Okay. And so when you went out of the cattle cars.
It's like you go on the subway and see it's all packed.
But worse than that.
Right, worse than that. Story.
And then after you were released from the cattle cars, do you remember what happened?
Released the cattle cars, they took us all out and we stayed there. And then they started picking up the people, young people, old people, kids little, they picked it up all separate and they went to separate sections.
When they finally arrived at Auschwitz, they were filthy, hungry, thirsty, tired, and emotionally and physically exhausted. No sooner that they were forced off the cattle cars like animals when the selections began. The older people, children, and people not suitable for work were sent to pack their belongings as if they were going to return for them. They were then told that they were going to be taking a shower, and the Nazis used Zyklon B, which was the trade name of a cyanide-based pesticide, and poisoned them with the deadly gas and killed everyone. Approximately 1.1 million people were killed using this method, mostly at Auschwitz. The death toll includes 960,000 Jews. 865,000 of them were gassed on arrival. It was the job of the Jewish prisoners to remove them from the poison showers and bring the bodies to the crematoriums. If you were lucky enough to be selected for work, you had a number tattooed on your forearm, and you were assigned to work. Abraham was separated from Oscar, and Abraham stayed the entire time at Plaszow Concentration Camp, which was close to Auschwitz, and worked at a factory. Oscar, however, lived in a rundown shack in a forest halfway between Plaszow and Auschwitz, and worked for the Nazis in inhumane, terrifying, and horrifying conditions. Oscar and his fellow prisoners would sleep during the day, and every evening they would be transported to, how do you say that word, Daddy? Chujowa Gorka?
Chujowa Gorka.
Chujowa Gorka.
Yeah, we don't spell it for you.
It's hard to spell. It's an expletive in Polish, where they would be forced to go to the killing field.
Christ,
you're right. And he would be forced to go to the killing fields where people had just been shot and take the gold from the dead people's teeth, take their gold rings, watches, and jewelry.
And that's what a disaster. They worked up and they picked up the people. They only pick up 2 Kampfstraus. I thought they were going to take me to kill me or something. Says, no, they came in, there was a truck waiting, and we go over there. They picked up 30 people every morning. This was for 6 weeks. And we went to that place, what you saw, they call it Chujowa Gorka. This is next. It was close to Plaszow, close to Auschwitz in the middle, and there was a place where they brought people with buses. Yeah, the buses were from Poland, was from Ukraine, from Russia, from all over the countries, all those countries, from Holland and England, doesn't make it, whatever they can from England too. And all the people that don't talk in different languages came in there, and we were over there walking in there, and the people had to go out from there. And there was a Gorka means a little bird, like a mountain, a hill. Yeah, that's correct. And they picked up the hill, and they picked up there, then they made up the thing. We didn't do that. They had some people with the show already before the hills, and they picked up, and the people came up from the bus every night. This was for 6 weeks like that. We went to work 30 people, 15 people never could have come back, Like you go now these days, if somebody goes in a packing company, can watch the kettles, how they get killed, not even people, but the kids, that reminds me, because I was from packing things there, but then you don't know what's going on.
So they made you take the gold from people's teeth.
Right.
So the people were dead at that moment.
They weren't dead. When you shot a person, he's not dead. They shot a kettle and never dead. They still were alive. And we had to go in there, and they're howling and screaming, and we pick up the gold teeth, and we got in the ring, diamond rings, everything. We picked it up, and there were some boxes, and put out in the boxes there. The way they went, we just found out later that we don't know where they went.
And these were not the Jewish prisoners. These were the intelligentsia. These were the educated people, the people that anyone who went against the Nazis.
That's correct.
They had them in a separate bus.
They were living in town, and they were not Jewish people. Was Gentile, was Greek, and was Gypsies, and all kinds from all nationalities. From Hungary, I can mention all these.
But they went against the Germans, and they were killed.
They didn't like what the Germans were doing, the Nazi, so they picked them up every day, and they brought them over to that place, and that was a place for them. I'm pretty sure they had other places too, but I don't know. I heard about it later. It was one of the places, but that's. I can tell you where I was there. And every day we came back, every night when we came home in the morning, I thought I'm going to go to sleep, sitting down there. And then after a while, I come and we have to clean this, we have to do this. We had a little quiet. Then the next day we go back again. So I was the one, maybe 10 people, 12 people, couldn't make it to go back there and keep on working, take out the gold teeth, because the people couldn't do that. So some people can see
and
this.
And you said after the war you still had bad dreams and you couldn't sleep and you had nightmares.
Yeah, this is the whole story. Yes,
when I was a little girl, I would hear him screaming in the middle of the night, and even now, many times I'll hear him have nightmares. And
sometimes it gets it. You think that you're still alive. Right? Yeah. And even when I was laying in the hospital when I was sick, I went to the hospital. I had troubles with my legs. So it reminds you in the night and things. So yeah, that never comes away. It gets away and
you just remember again.
That's all it is.
Every day, the Nazis would kill at least half of Oscar's Jewish prisoners who were forced to work in this detail, as some of the prisoners were not emotionally or physically strong enough to do the work, or would faint or beg to be shot. The Nazis would go back each day to Auschwitz and select the strongest boys or men to reman the unit. The gold from the gold fillings and jewelry would be placed in boxes, and the Nazis would gather the gold for their war machine. As many of you know, every part of the murdered prisoners' bodies would be repurposed. Clothes, shoes, human hair would be spun into thread for the production of textiles and army blankets and socks for U-boat crews. And defenseless human beings were used for gruesome medical experiments. The repurposing jobs were done by Jewish prisoners, and they were forced to grapple with their mortality and morality every moment of every day, and they decide if they would go on or be killed by the Nazis. My dad always hoped that he would see his parents and sister again, so he felt that if he prayed and believed in God, that the war and everyone's suffering would end. After 6 weeks in this unspeakable unit, he was returned to Plaszow Concentration Camp and worked as a slave laborer, packing and carrying parts throughout the factory until mid-1944. Oscar was transported from Plaszow Concentration Camp to Auschwitz by Dresden. Oh, thank you, Daddy. He worked in the tank factory, hauling parts from one place or another, cleaning parts, throwing parts away, and carrying parts from warehouse to factory. Oscar also worked in the kitchen, which probably saved his life, as he would stuff food in his mouth when the Nazis were not looking. One time, he was bringing potatoes for his brother Abraham and their cellmates that Oscar had taken to give to them from the kitchen. A Nazi saw him take the potato and had the dogs ferociously bite him in the leg. Oscar still has a part of his leg that is badly scarred where the dogs bit him. But he was very lucky. He didn't get it. His leg did not get infected, and he was able to continue working. As Dad has said many times, a lot of things were based on luck. And if a Nazi would look the other way, or if someone would help you from the camp, and he felt it was his job to feed his brother who was very, very sick and to help his fellow cellmates when he had the good luck of working in the kitchen, he felt it was the right thing to do. And several people in Denver who I know corroborated the story and said, yes, indeed, that did happen. And that is why he has this scar on his leg. As a young girl, I did know several people in Denver who knew him, and they all told me how he tried to help everyone and to try and keep everyone's spirits up. He was lucky. He was a young man. He was a young man. So that helped tremendously. That as opposed to some of the older people who had already lost their wives, they knew there were very few people left back at home, and their future was no longer available to them. This was not the first time Oscar had stolen food for him. I had stolen food from the kitchen and gave the contraband food to his cellmates so they would not die of starvation. And as you will find out, many survivors were after the war, they worked in food-related industries because food was something that always meant everything to them, and that meant their survival. In early 1945, the war was going badly for the Germans, and they were moving farther and farther west to get away from the Russians. And the prisoners were forced to walk in the middle of the winter for 2 to 3 weeks to reach Theresienstadt. Many of them, including his brother, Abraham, died on the march. So unfortunately, Daddy was now alone.
They didn't have any more transportation anymore. That's what all those.
Right. So they forced him to walk in the middle of the winter. And as you would know, without proper clothes, without proper shoes, many of them died of frostbite. Many of them just had no food.
This was on the border from Germany, from Auschwitz. go into Czechoslovakia, to Theresienstadt. And we were walking there for a few weeks. We were walking there. And half of the people we were walking, they couldn't make it. So in the middle of the night, they just dumped them off there on the side. Whatever they did for them, we kept on walking. That's what's happened to our brother, my brother too, the same thing. The youngest brother trying to keep him alive, but they couldn't because he had troubles from before.
His lungs had been compromised because even though he did not have the backbreaking work that Oscar had at the beginning when he was in Mielic, he was very, very close to the glue. And so all the glue and the paint had eventually weakened his lungs, so he just could not move forward. And unfortunately, he died on the way. All the time that Abraham had worked in the airplane factory had damaged his lungs, and he died. And it was very, very sad for Daddy. Many of the prisoners were starved, beaten, and frozen to death. As Oscar and the other prisoners were walking, some of the people in the villages along the way would throw rocks at them. Some of the kinder townspeople would throw beets or potatoes for them to eat. If the Nazis did not see the food, the prisoners would eat the contraband food as fast as they could. Once in Theresienstadt, Oscar cleaned streets, latrines, barracks, etc. Oscar was actually building the last of the crematoriums. If they had not been liberated by the Russians, all the prisoners would have all died. They were just 4 days from completing the crematoriums, when the Nazis would have used on all of them, so there would be no remaining prisoners to tell the story of the Holocaust. As many of you know, when the war was ending, the Germans did their best to dig up many of the remains and try to destroy them further, so there would be no one to be able to say that any of these remains belong to any live beings. And the same thing with the last remaining vestiges of the prisoners. They wanted to lose them as much as they could also. Otherwise, Daddy would not be here. And that's what they wanted. They wanted this all to be some type of lie that no one would ever say had ever happened. So
also, they tried to save in Theresienstadt when I came over there. They tried to save all the intelligent people from Germany for years. If anything happened in Berlin, a big engineer or professor or anything smart, they kept them over. They took him to Theresienstadt. This was the last concentration camp. What it was after Auschwitz had troubles. And that's all that I can tell you about it.
On May 10th,
there were lots of intelligent people from Germany, they said that they were there for 4 or 5 years. They saved them to the last minute. But later, they didn't have any choice because the Russians came in right away. I was a lost case. I didn't know where I'm going to go, alive, or that. And the Germans came in 4:30 in the morning. The Russians, I'm sorry. They came in, the Russian came in, and they say, "You free." And the Russians start talking a little. And I was talking a little, because I talk Polish too. But Polish and Russian is a little control, Then you start talking to them and say that you're all free, everything is all right. 24 hours later, this was 4 o'clock in the morning. In the night, afternoon, of the night, all the lots of American trucks came in. And then you got lots of Jewish soldiers too. They were speaking even Jewish to you. Some people from New York, I remember.
But at the beginning, they gave you too much food, right?
Yeah, that was terrible. They were also hungry. They didn't know what to eat. They brought them some food. They brought them some candy. All the things that they didn't know. They were so sick after a while. It seemed like people going out to prison where you got to watch what you eat. Otherwise, you can. Even now, you have to watch what you eat, and sometimes you get sick. You eat too much.
But those people died right after the war. They were so hungry.
That's like flies. They would die. They couldn't take it. The stomach couldn't take it. They were skinny and hungry. I think in the pictures you can see how skinny they were. I was lucky. I was working in a kitchen, and I could.
At the end,
Schachwitz near Dresden. When I was working before I came in over there to Theresienstadt. And I was working in the kitchen. Even they didn't let you eat. They don't touch anything, nothing. They know everything. They would look away the side, so we gave a little potato or something. We're not supposed to do it. Saber once, I know she said that about, I took home some potatoes. I didn't steal, I just took it home. And then one of the work shoots, at the door caught me. I had some potatoes. He saw that. And I was trying to help my brother, to help him, And not my brother, but I had a few potatoes. I can help some other people too, be alive. Well, anyway, a potato or beets or anything and things. There was some people was nice, some people were things that when we were walking, like she said that before, some of them throw to stones, some of them throw sandwiches of bread. That was happening every place over there too, even in the factory too. Some Polish people, some German people, they're not all like that. There's different people every place. Good ones, just like fish. I always say, like in a lake, you get good fish and good bad fish. It's the same thing. So, but what are you going to do? You have to live. You have to take the best you can, and you live with things that. I always, when I was a little boy, my dad used to say to me, "Don't worry, God will help," and things. When the Germans came in, and my father was right there in the basement, it was, putting on the tefillin, talis and tefillin in the morning when they came in, and it was dark. And I said, "Dad, right here." So don't worry, Mashiach is coming. I heard that for years since I was born. Mashiach is coming. I still heard it now. Now we get full the Lubavitch. I don't know. That's all right. Whatever it is, everything is going like that. We have to live a life the best you can, my friend.
Right. On May 10th, 1945, the Germans knew they were losing the war. And in the middle of the night, with the Soviet troops on their footsteps, many Germans escaped. At 4 a.m., the Soviets liberated Theresienstadt and told the prisoners they were free. Oscar was one of the lucky ones. Over 90% of Poland's entire Jewish population were murdered. The Jewish communities of Eastern Europe were devastated. In 1933, 3.3 million Jews lived in Poland. Their percentage among the general population in Poland was about 10%. By the end of World War II, 3.2 million Jews were killed. Only 380,000 Polish Jews were still alive. And most of them were people that were partisans or people that were held by righteous people that saved them. Most of them did not make it from the concentration camps. Most of them were from living outside and escaping from the Germans. Over 90% of Poland's entire Jewish population was murdered. 60% of European Jews were killed, either by concentration camps, starvation, or murder squads. A total of 6.5 million Jews died in Europe. In 1939, there were 16.6 million Jews in the world. Today, there are only 14 million Jews in the entire world. The Nazi killing machine was very effective in destroying an entire generation of human beings and their descendants. My dad was spared. In May of 45, my dad was finally free. He had been under Nazi tyranny for over 6 years. And he was left with no family, no home, no education, no money, no profession, and no country. He did try to find, as many people did, any family members throughout the Red Cross, and only found one cousin who had lost his wife and 2 children. He stayed with his cousin at Landsberg Displaced Persons Camp for a few weeks. In 1946, Daddy boarded a ship for Israel, but was stopped by the English and ended up in another camp in Cyprus. As you would expect, he refused to trust anyone who would place him in another camp and went with the Italian Red Cross back to Italy. He was given an opportunity with the Italian Red Cross to go back, and he said, at that point, we had no idea that Israel would ever be a country, and the last people he would trust would anybody who would incarcerate him in another camp, as they had done in Cyprus. As he had no place to go, he went back to Munich, and he met some of his friends from after the concentration camp that he knew, and looked for work and waited for his visa to America. He waited 5 years to come to America. He could have gone many other places with much faster visa requirements. He could have gone to South America, he could have gone to Australia, but he always wanted to go to America. He had found out that he had one uncle that was living in Denver. So he boarded a ship to America in 1951, and he started the second half of his life.
God, in America, I tell you, I knew about America because he was with me there, and he came in before I came, because he was cousin Hersch, and the cousin was in New York, and I stopped there, and I came out from the the ship there, you know, in and it came in there, and they say there was a lady, they were taking you in there to help you, because I didn't speak English. I think I speak 4 or 5 languages, but English was a hard job. The first thing, I didn't speak too good English. I learned a little in Germany, but not too much. So I came over there and I went to the cab drive, and I could sit down there for a while. I said, where do you want to go? So we went over there, and I said to a guy, he said, what do you learn? What language do you speak? I speak 5 languages. I said, Polish, German, and all things. So he says he speaks Polish, then I was saved. So I took him, he took me that street. The street was in New York, Norfolk Street. My cousin lived there, you know, in a upstairs, and the summertime is too hot and the wintertime is too cold. I came into New York, and I said to him, I was there for two weeks or 3 weeks. And I said, Hirsch, what are you doing here? So he works in a bakery, you know. He works 12, 13 hours a day, sometimes 15 hours a day in the night shift. And he was working on Long Island in a bakery shop. He was making money. We put in things there. And I said, I don't think so. I'm going to stay here, because I'm going to find out from mine. I heard when I was a little boy, they had a wedding. They sent him to my uncle, my father's brother. It's in the 20s or 23. They had money. Then they went over to England. You know, some of them had money. If you had money, you could go, but we couldn't afford to go. So they went to England, and they lived in England. And after the war, they went to Denver, Colorado, and he had a clothing store. And then I came over there, and how did I find out from them? From the Red Cross, you know, we found out to go to the Red Cross in New York, and I found out that they told me there's somebody, the name Singer, lives in New York, in Denver, Colorado. So how do I go? I don't know, speak English. I don't know. I said, I'll take a chance. I went to the 42nd Street, you know, and then I said, then I got a ticket, and I had a little money put away, things there, and I paid the ticket. We went over there to Denver, Colorado. And then Denver, Colorado was the American Joint Distribution. They picked me up, you know, and then things there. So after a while.
And then you met your cousins for the first time, didn't you? You went to Denver, and you met your cousins that had moved to England in the 20s.
Right. They're from England. They moved over there to Denver, Colorado. They had a store there, a clothing store. Was working a good deal. It was mostly Spanish people. So he said he wants to work there. I said, if I speak Spanish, I said yes. And then I was already, I didn't know how to speak zapatos, pantalones, but I was trying to sell them, you know, this is, and I was trying to, he said, you're a good salesman, I keep you there. And I said, no, I'm not going to, you get you help, I'll stay. And then my cousin, you know, there was my cousin, his son was working a big department store at the grocery store. And I said, he's going to get me a job. I said, well, can I do that? I can write. I said, you know, you can write the numbers and everything else. So he got me in to have milk, work in a big department store, you name it. They used to own a grocery store. Maybe like Safeway, they have 20 or 30 stores already there in around Colorado, every place. And when my cousin was working, he didn't own it, but he worked at the grocery store. And she annoyed with the packing house. Then I said to him, you know, this was first job. And I said to him, I want to go on my own. I can run at things there after a while. I don't speak English, but I always tried to get my own business, you know. I was a little, same way we were trying to do things there. Then I went over there and tell my cousin, I think I had to tell you, I'm not going to work there. Put me in the grocery store there, and then from the grocery store, then one of his friends owned a Sigmund meat company. The name was Sigmund, but they made sausage. They made that. That's a good place for me. I like to eat that. The clothing I could eat, the sausage, then I was still staying over there in the house, in my uncle's house. He said they kept me very good. I was staying there maybe for 6 to 7 weeks. Then they gave me my cousin called up Sigmund Meat Company. So he said, he's a good man. He knows his father had a butcher shop. In Europe, he knows a little bit about cattle, the cows, how to. So then I was starting working there. The trouble is, instead put me into a cattle packing company, put me in pigs. I never worked with pigs, with chaza, it's kosher. So they put me over there, and I came home. Whenever I came home back to my aunt, my aunt, an English lady, she said, you smell some pigs all the time. I was there only 3 days. And then I took a shower every night when we left. You have to take a shower, but scooping the pigs is pretty easy. I said, yeah, I have to think. She said, it smells a little bit. So I said, that's what I was working for 2 days. That's what. Finally, she talked to her. Then she calls up her son in Denver, Colorado. She said, what do you put him in there? But he don't know. It smells the whole time. The whole house is smelling. So he changed, and then I quit, and I said, I'm going to get me something else. And then I worked for somebody else.
And you opened your own grocery store?
In a grocery store. So we bought a grocery store overseas over there. How do you get money? We had saved up money a little bit in Germany. I was working in a store. I wouldn't stay in the displaced person camp in Munich. I lived this is like a concentration camp, I said. So me and 3 brothers, me and 3 friends left there in the Landsberg, was displaced persons. And they give you food, they give you eat for nothing, you have to work there. And I didn't want to do that, so I start in a grocery store first. Right. Then first grocery store, I worked a little, I don't know if you've ever been in Munich, Germany, Stiegelmeier place, the home dry house. Did you ever been there in the basement? The place there I worked there was washing dishes and everything else.
And you washed dishes, and then what happened to get to Italy?
Yeah, I washed dishes
nice
out the white. It was nice to me. They say to me that they'll put me in, they are going to want to send me to Italy to a school, to culinary school. Yeah, I'm very good with dishes washing, and I picked up lots of good at the grill, to fried hamburgers and everything else. So they're going to send me to Modena, Italy. My daughter reminds me, I forget the towns. Okay. So many towns I was. So then I went over there to Modena, and they were starting to make Italian, that they teach you everything how to make Italian sausage and pepperoni. It's not kosher, sauce and everything else. So, and I was learning there, and then after a while came back to Munich, and we went back there, and I was under that, had to work there, and I've still worked there for a while. And that's all it is. And from then on, I just got to do it myself there later. That's all.
And then when you went to Denver, you ended up opening up a restaurant, didn't you?
Yes, but I came back to Denver after a while. I had to work there for a few years. What?
You saved money, and then you...
Yeah, saved money. We opened a restaurant. Yeah, this is 2 years, a little later. I didn't speak English. How do you know? I don't know. I don't know the difference between scrambled eggs, poached eggs, and things that, I don't know. But you learn. I said that we had a manager, and we got things there. And from then on, we start to work there and start saving money, put the bank like like supposed to do it. You don't spend money. If you make $100, if you save $50, you're all right. And if you don't save it, you're in trouble. So we try to do the best we can. And I ran my business and everything was okay. When I met my wife, was 1957. I was already there, 32 years old. I didn't want to get married. I didn't even want to get married because my cousins all in Denver asked me. They introduced me to some girls and their friends, and they said, I didn't want to get married. I didn't know how I'm going to make a living for my children. Who knows? So I got married in 1957, 1930 when I was 32. I met my wife. I met in Aurora, Illinois, Chicago. How did I get there? A friend of mine was in Holocaust and concentration camp with me, and we were talking about it. We found out to a friend from Denver, from Landsberg, from Germany, that he went to Dixon. He stays there in Aurora, Colorado, in Aurora, Illinois. When I came in 1957, when I met to see him there, I didn't know anything about my wife. But then he said, "There's a girl goes to work in Chicago. She's an assistant buyer or something." Mm-hmm. You remember you met her? So it took me 4 or 5 weeks to get her because she was working over there at the store, but she was traveling to New York. She was assistant buyer or something, and that's all it was. The whole thing. And then from then on, he got married.
March 17th, and he got married January.
No, March 18th. Then he right. That's we engaged in June, and that's what I right. And that's what it is. And we got married and we started working on and with my wife. And then my wife helped me a lot. We had 2 children. 2 children helped me a lot too. Days you control my daughter and I. See, my son lives far away. I can talk to him. To her, I can see. She takes care of me like a hotel, better than a hotel. So that's all I can tell you. And that's it. Life goes on like that. Thank God for that. We always to be alive. Who knows? Now with the virus, we can't go. We're staying like in a prison here every day. You can't go no place. Even you want to go someplace where they want to let you, you can't. You're not supposed to. Maybe this will be over pretty soon. So who knows?
Dad is one of the lives that was spared, and Oscar believes that he is here today by the grace of God to try and make the world a better place, practice acts of everyday kindness, and to share his story. The most important lesson that my father taught me was that the Nazis could steal their food, your hair, your clothes, and all your worldly possessions. However, as much as they tried, Oscar would never let them steal his humanity. Everyone has a choice to choose humanity over evil, and to choose hope, forgiveness, and love, or darkness, violence, racism, and brutality. My father embodies what is right in this world, and he will always be my inspiration. Thank you for letting me share his story with you.
But you have to do what you can, do the best you can. And God, if you believe in God, God will help you. You're going to think that if you're a nice man, an honest man, you don't end up in troubles. You have to do what you can do. And always he told me to take Shir Malos means when you're sick or you're dying. I don't know. You know what Shir Malos is? Between Yom Kippur, between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, we have to open the ark, and when we say Shir Malos, Mima Machim Kerusichu Adoshem, Adoshem Shime Bakoili. You know what that is? Shir Malos is it's a prayer where you can help. God will help you do that and all of that, even if you don't know. From the inside, I still remember it outside because I was praying that all the time. And I had to pray when the Germans don't see it, That's what I know is without a prayer book, to read it. So thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. And thank you all for joining us for this special discussion with Oscar Singer and his daughter, Lee Fischbach, at this year's 39th Annual Greater Lafayette Holocaust Remembrance Conference. My name is Rebecca Klein-Peshova, and I will be moderating the question and answer portion of the program. It is an honor to be here and take part in this important conversation. There have been a lot of questions, and you've been very active during the recorded part of this program, and I've tried to cluster the questions as best as I can to get to as many of the points that you're curious about. But I'm going to ask the first question, which highlights your dual generational presentation and transmission of the experience from generation to generation. And it has to do with the dual pictures of Oscar that you put on the piano, one in prison stripes and one later on in regular clothing. So I have one question for Oscar and one question for Lee. And the question for Oscar is, when did you decide to put these pictures together and put them on the piano? And the question for Lee is, when is your first memory of those pictures entering your consciousness?
Daddy, honey, when was your...
I didn't even know we didn't have a piano. I didn't know when we had the piano.
When did you put it on? When did you put the pictures? When did you want to put the pictures on in our house? When did you get the pictures?
I want to make the pictures. These pictures, the first pictures in the Holocaust uniform, made me a Russian lady officer. She was there, and when I was liberated right there, and she made it for me, the picture, and then she made me a day later. She made me in a regular uniform. That's all she made.
What made you decide to put it in our house? What made you put it in a frame? Why did you put it in a frame, and why did you show it up? Why did you look at it every day when you came home from work?
Because I wanted to see, but I didn't want the kids not to think. But then my wife, this was after I got married, when I had the things there. And then she said, we're going to make that picture, put it on there. Why not? Because I was in the Holocaust and you can see what things there. But we couldn't tell the kids anything till around 7, 8 years later, because she didn't know. My wife was born, raised in the things there. She didn't want to say anything.
Right. Like I said, we moved into that house in Denver when I was 3.5 years old, maybe. And I never remember a time when it wasn't on my mom's piano in the front hall. And it, like I said, it just always seemed normal. And I would say I remember it since I was 4 years old. And to me, they seemed like two different types of clothing. And as I said earlier, it was when my friends asked me when I was about 7 or 8. And then I was a little curious as to why my dad was in a prison uniform. And over the years, I would ask questions, but I know that any question I would ask him, especially that maybe had been less than 10 years or so after the war ended, he would start to cry. So I knew I had a very limited window that I could ask him any questions because it would upset him. And then I would just try to remember these things, as would my brother. And we would just get
when I have the children, my wife said, don't say anything and things to themselves. They have to be quiet. They have to find out for themselves later when they get a little older, you know. That's right.
As a follow-up to that, one of our members of our audience has asked what it's like to be the child of a survivor.
Okay. I would say I hadn't thought much about it until I was much older. In Denver, there's actually a lot of survivors. It's an interesting place where you wouldn't think that there would be, but as I might have said in the presentation, there were a few people my dad knew from the camps. In fact, the days after he moved to Denver, he met an old friend, Mr. Seawald, and he lived in their home for another year or so. And there were many people that even knew my dad during the war, after the war. And it seemed normal to me. There was a New American Club. There was, yes.
Because a lot of survivors came from all over the country because there was an anti-Semitic Jewish hospital, the biggest hospital in Denver, Colorado. If they have asthma, you know, like the football players have to put it in for asthma. And then they have hospitals. They came in from all over the world. We saw lots of people from Israel. Everybody came.
Right. They came there, especially like I said about his older brother, who were injured from all the proximity to the glue and all the things that a lot of the Jewish prisoners had to work with in World War II. Their lungs were damaged, so a lot of them came to Denver. So basically, I didn't think much about it, and then I read some interesting books about it. I felt our family was a little different. We were a very nuclear family. We were always told not to trust anybody from outside. We were very insular. We had a very insulated world. We went to work with my parents. My brother, Sam, and I, we went to work with my parents, and they owned a restaurant, and we did that every day. And we really didn't have children come to the house. It wasn't an open family type of environment that I lived in, where there was a lot of exchange of people coming in and out. We were basically taught to be very insular. It was a nuclear family where there was the four of us, and we didn't really trust outsiders that much. It wasn't until I was much older that I realized that isn't how most normal Americans really do have a family. Yeah.
Thank you. And so from that point, what I'd like to do is go back to Oscar's childhood, because several people have been curious about what you remember from your childhood. Do you have any particularly fond memories of the village where you grew up? Did you ever go back there after the war?
Oh, I can tell you. I went over there. We went to school, and then when I was a little boy, 5, 6 years old, she didn't like you Jews right after the, camp. I don't know why they did things.
Do you remember any good memories, anything with your family that you could remember? Any holiday memories?
Yeah, holidays,
special?
Pesach, over the Pesach, we went together, the family, and then everything called the holidays and things there. And that's all. We had always together, the neighbors, especially on Yom Kippur. The neighbor's house, there was even the Jewish people, all neighborhood, who lived together, and wanted to take a little grass, a little other grass, and they start, but it comes in Yom Kippur, Erev Yom Kippur, they come in forgiveness, for give it to Jewish people. And that's how we lived in a little country.
Do you remember anything when you were a little boy in living in Radomysl Wielki? Any memories from your
There's nothing,
home?
all I remember.
Any memories from your family at all?
Family, I don't remember, because my uncle died a long time ago. And
I'm talking about your family in Radomysl Wielki. Do you remember anything, any stories or anything when you were a little boy?
Well, stories, we lived in a little home, and the people lived there, and there was all kinds of things there. I can remember when I was 9 years old, I had to go upstairs to get some wood for the house in the wintertime, and I fall down with the hand, and I lost my teeth. So what was happening, we had to wait till the next day. I lost my blood too, because I had to wait. There was no hospitals in our little town. There was the next big hospitals was in Tarnov town. This is next. It's around 24 kilometers from there. And then there was no buses. You had to wait till next morning for the bus, because we go with the car all day and all with the horses. Takes around 8 hours to go there. And it was cold in the wintertime. And I fall down, and then I had to come over there. Then the worst part, you come into Tarnov, there's a hospital, a regular hospital, and a Jewish hospital. Then we come to the Jewish hospital, it's all filled. We couldn't go there. Then we come to a Gentile hospital. They took us in there. It was Christmas time.
They were very, very nice to let him to stay there, and that's where he convalesced. They tried to put his team back together.
Tried to put together wires with things. They're all kinds of, what are you going to do? You have to do what you can. That's all.
Yeah, and a number of people have also been interested if you've gone back to Poland, if you've gone back to see...
I never wanted to go back to Poland. Only I was one time back to Poland with my friend. This was maybe 2 weeks from there. From Theresienstadt, we went back to Munich. Then a friend says they used to own from our little town. I met him. I was together with him at Holocaust, and he goes there. We're going to go to our town. The name was Radogosz, near Tarnov too. It goes over there to a farm, horses and cows, but somebody gave it to him, or somebody gave when they put it in
the Nazis had given the farm to
a Gentile. Yes. Then he came over there and it says to ask him, do I get anything for what he got for me? Then he
Did
says,
our parents leave us anything? Any pictures? Anything?
Yes. And then he says, the cows and the horses. Then he says, just a minute, I'll show you what it is. So he went from, just a minute, I said in Polish, you know, said, just a minute, I'll show you some. He went over there and got a gun and killed him. I was lucky, I stayed right there.
So he said they never really wanted.
So since he got killed, we have to take him and we put him to Dombrova, to another town. And I went to the commandatur, the Russian commandatur. She said, everything is okay, but you should have told us that you go into this country, to the little village.
So he said to himself he would never go back.
I never wanted to go back.
Right.
It's my daughter the same way. But
no, I did go back. I went about 4 years ago.
She went back 4 or 5 years ago, and she wants me to go. But
right, yeah, he did not want to go.
I didn't.
Yeah, it would be too upsetting for him, and the memories. And basically, I think what I've read is about 99% of the village was destroyed except the church. So there wasn't really anything left to see that he would remember as a little boy.
I don't even want to go to Germany either.
Okay. My next question is about languages. So as you were growing up, which languages did you learn? Which language?
The first degree.
I'm sorry. No, go ahead. I'm sorry. What was the question? I'm sorry.
Just which languages did you use, and were any particularly helpful to you in your later wartime experiences?
At home, mostly we use Yiddish language. And when I went to school, we learned Polish language. We didn't learn any languages in the school like now. The school, you know, they teach Spanish and everything else. Here, every language but we never learned that at all. Only I learned these languages. I speak 5 languages, but I have to be a day or 2 days, like in Mexico, can speak Spanish and in Yiddish, in Polish, in German, in Russian, 5 languages. And I can't get lost. And even when I go to Italy, I was there in Italy learning for 2-3 months, still did things there. You always never get lost if you speak things there. And that's all it is. Yeah, that's what I speak.
Right. And so with this idea of never getting lost, I'm going to move into a big set of questions.
Yes.
There are a lot of people who were thinking about this idea of where you found strength. They want to know how you felt the strength to keep going, and was there anything in particular that you did, or was there any prayer that you said, or something?
Right. That's what she said.
Right. Okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
All right. One thing is, that was I learned from my dad when I told him the first time. I know you heard it before. The first time he says that the Germans coming in the morning, and he has his talus and twill and davening in the morning in the basement. And I said they're going to come in and they're going to kill you. He was praying in the morning, you know, the Jewish people, you're Jewish. And then he comes up and thinks there, says to me, don't worry about it. Everything is okay. I said, they're going to come in and kill you. Say, God will help. So I said, God will help the right here, the motorcycles running in and everything else. And God helps, everything is all right. Mashiach will come before they come. So
the Messiah.
The Messiah. So I'm waiting here for 95 years of the Messiah. It's all right. He'll be here some days.
So how did you make it through the camp? How did you get up every morning? What you had to do? Get the gold teeth from people's teeth, work, starve. What made you keep going? Why did you keep going? Why did you not give up?
Because I didn't never give up, because the word he told me, I listened to my dad, what he told me when I was a little boy. You have to worry that Hashem is always with you, and God will with you if you're going to pray. And then it comes in the last things that you have to say is a capital in Tehillim. It's a Shir Amalos, you know.
Right.
You say that when you're over, but you can't talk. I went to Germans for 6 years, so you have to do it all from your out.
He would pray a prayer called Shir Hamalas, and that's what he would say every day. And that's what made you keep going though? You were starving, you were hungry. Why did you, beyond the prayers, what made you keep wanting to survive? How could you go one more day starving?
Because I always thought there's always another day. We're going to do that. We're going to suffer. We're going to do it. And that's what I did, suffering. And God will help me. And I did it all, what I could do the best. And that's all. It is shame. All in life, even now, you have to do the right thing. You don't go to right business or right whatever you do. You have to be honest way. You got to control yourself too. You can be too much excited. Everything is and you get a lot excited. You do before you see it, but you have to slow down. Otherwise, you get sick and all kinds of things. That's what I learned from my experience.
And my dad has always taught me that the world is like a big lake. I mean, there's good fish and there's bad fish. You can't blame you can't drain the lake because there's some bad fish. And you always have to hope that the next day there will be some good fish that will help you, and you can have a better life. And you always have to hope for the best. I think you've always said that you always have to hope for the best. Nothing is ever too much. You have to forgive people. You have to forgive yourself for being less than perfect, and you have to move on.
You have children that do wrong, they're nice, everything's right, but you have to do all with the nachas and nice for a person.
You have to do the right thing. Like the one thing, as I said, they can take away everything, but once they take away humanity, your enemies have won. And the worst thing to do is become like your enemy, because that's what they want you to do. But if you remain a good person and you try to stay above the fray, then no, they really can't touch you. They really can't touch you.
You've got to be honest with people who say, you have to be honest. They want you to be honest to you too. And that's all you live your life.
So this leads into another question. A number of people have been interested in the question of forgiveness, which you just mentioned.
I don't know who can you forgive.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
What is your position on forgiveness?
What is your position? How can you forgive? How can you not hate anymore? Why are you still in a forgiving mode after all these years and being an orphan at 16 and being so terrorized? How can you do
all
that?
I tell you is you just live like that with your life. You got to be nice to.
How can you forgive?
I don't know how you can forgive. You can talk to people who would be nice, and you can straighten out some people or something. Same like if somebody gets sick, it goes to a doctor, gives them a little pill, helps them and things. That some of them help the doctor. There is.
But do you forgive? Do you forgive everybody who did the terrible things to you?
I still forgive half and half. I don't know what to tell you.
If you were to meet them, if you were to meet somebody on the street right now that was maybe somebody who hurt you when you were a prisoner,
I can't do anything about it. It's all gone. It's just that the life has got to go for us, whatever it is.
You have to go forward.
Forward. You can't hate
all your life. It'll eat you up.
Right. You can hate it. So you got to live it. It's what you got to live, and that's all. You can. There is talk of rich is poor. You got to do the best you can.
What would be your advice for people who are going through tough times?
To be nice and to be still nice to people. You can holler and scream at people for nothing. You got to be nice. That's all. But that's my advice.
For people that have a hard time, maybe right now, like during what we're dealing with COVID, how would you tell them to try to? How do you cope? How are you coping?
I can cope with it. Same with that stuff. Same. I was in the hospital for Charles Morrison right in Pittsburgh, in the hospital for 4 or 5 months. You have to do the best you can. And you hope God will help you, and that did help because 4 years ago I couldn't walk on my feet. I was thinking, God helps me. I got out my feet and everything is all right. I don't have to stay in a nursing home, mostly on a wheelchair, but I have a walker. You can walk, at least you couldn't. 5 years ago, you couldn't walk. God helps you. You got to believe it. Then you have to help, believe. You have to help. Thank God I have a daughter and a son, so they help you. Lots of my daughters are just like a hotel. She don't even let me go to a nursing home. Then she'll take care of myself, even how she has to work for herself too. That's all it is. That's all you can hope in your life.
Thank you. I'm going to move back a little bit now to the post-war experience. So, a number of people have asked about the experience of the post-war emigration to America and why you decided to go to America instead of somewhere else. In particular, why not to Israel, and why not to someplace else where a visa became available earlier?
I put in my visa, I put it right after when we came out. We were in Landsberg in a displaced person camp, Landsberg near Munich, Germany. We went over there, and I was there for 4 or 5 weeks. And you said, you got to have a future. Where do you want to go? They signed up to South America, North America, or China. No, not China. We didn't have that. Australia there. In South Africa, lots to do. And I said, right, Israel. And I said, I want to go to Israel and things. Then we started to go to Israel, but stopped us right there in Cyprus. They didn't like Israel.
The British mandate, the British stopped my dad. He actually was on a boat. They stopped him, and then they sent him to Cyprus. So then he was shipped back to Munich. He went to Italy with the Italian Red Cross, and he was shipped back to Munich. He went to Munich, and then he basically had nowhere to go, no place to go. And he had heard that he did have relatives in Denver. So he decided to wait for a visa, which took about 5 years.
I have to wait to 5 years for a visa to come.
And then he had to work, as he said, he worked as a dishwasher. He worked as a cook in Munich. He saved his money, did the best he could, lived with his friends.
I put in his money in the bank.
And I think he also hoped that maybe there'd be some family members still alive, and he kept looking for them in the Red Cross. He was always, talking to the Red Cross to see if maybe there was somebody left from his village or somebody left that would remind him of his home. And he never gave up hope with that.
I found out they have an uncle there. They left before the Second World War, 1921. They went to England, and my uncle got married there, and they came to the United States. I found that out through the.
And then he found out he had 4 other siblings. Maybe one went to Mexico. His uncle. He had uncles and aunts, which he never met. But one emigrated to Mexico. Another one emigrated to California and New York. But he did not have any knowledge of them. And he went to Denver hoping to reunite with his family. And they were very kind to him when he came back. When he went to Denver.
The doctor wanted to stay there and to help. And I wanted to go to.
So you waited for so long, and you found this connection in the States. What was your first impression when you got to America?
Very nice. The first impression, I can tell you, this is just a joke. I asked the lady in New York, and then she tells me, you don't know how to. She's going to take me around wherever I want to go in New York, because it's a big town and you're going to get lost. It was one from the American Jewish, committee, the things that. She was a very nice lady. And she said, you don't speak English, you don't know how to talk, they used to call it Jewish a Griedehorn. I don't know if you heard that. so I said, I am not a Griedehorn. I was driving to Berlin, I was driving in Munich, I was driving to Paris, all kinds of business. So I know where to go. She said, you don't know how to speak. You don't even speak English. I said, don't worry, I have my languages. First thing I went in, but then she finally let me go when I saw I didn't want to go. Where am I going to go? But she was very nice to help me. And I went in on a cab drive, and I said to her, what kind of language you speak? He speaks Polish. So he took, and where do you want to go? And I said, I'm Norfolk Street in New York. My cousin lives there. So then it could have took me for another way to say, my cousin says, how much did you pay? I said, I don't remember, maybe 20. So he said it took $10 more. He was driving around the other way because, so that's, what do I care? So long I was there, that's all it is. They're very nice people. Listen, I wouldn't be here. There's lots of friends. They came in with us. And when I met him in New York and said, oh, I don't know, I don't speak English. You have to learn or get married sometimes to American girls to teach you. And my wife always teach me. She didn't even let me make my citizenship. She bought me a book. I don't know how many senators and things. I would have to know how many presidents. It's all kinds of business.
My mother wanted him to get his citizenship on his own. So she made him, even with his limited education, he only went to like maybe 7th grade, but even with his lack of English skills, she said, no, I am not going to have my husband not have his citizenship on his own. So she made him every day study, and then he took the test on his own.
My wife was so funny when I was talking English in my restaurant, and the guy asked me where you're from, and I said, do I speak good English? And she said, oh, he don't speak. They see how he's a foreign guy. So that's the way it goes. We laugh all the time. We had fun with my wife. We lived for 61 years. It's too bad she died 2 years ago. She thinks they're very nice, but they have 2 nice children, and I have a family, grandchildren too, and a nice son-in-law I have too, and that's all it is.
And a nice daughter-in-law.
Nice daughter. Everything is okay. And the son, you do what the best you can. You live the best of your life. That's all. I enjoy living in America.
Okay.
So I want to ask a question. There's a cluster of questions here too about current issues. And you went through the immigrant experience. You became a citizen. What do you think about how the U.S. is handling its current immigration questions? And there's a question particularly about asylum seekers and immigrants at the U.S.-Mexico border. What is your perspective on that?
Well, you can answer that. She knows how to.
Okay. Daddy watches news every day, and he sees the difficulties that immigrants are having to come to this country. And I think most of us have to remember that, except for the indigenous people, we are all immigrants. And many of us 1, 2, 3 generations ago, and even though maybe we all speak perfect English, we have the American experience down pat. That's all we ever know. That many of us came here because the countries that we were in were not a situation that made our lives, a nice place. So we need to open the doors to people that need us, like they say in the Statue of Liberty. We need to be smart about it. We need to help people that need a chance. Everybody came here hoping, and everybody that is here in America now, except, as I said, the indigenous people, they came here hoping for a better future. And the way things used to be, and the way we had more open borders for asylum seekers and people that lives were in danger to come here, we gave them an opportunity. If as everyone might remember, prior to World War II, there was quotas, their immigration quotas that we never even met. And they knew what was happening in Germany, and they still did not only did they not exceed their immigrant quotas, they didn't even make their immigrant quotas. And they knew what was happening to the Jews in Germany, especially prior to 1939. And they still did not allow anybody to come. And other countries also did not open their borders. And the people perished once Hitler saw that no one really cared about these people, then they had carte blanche. They could do whatever they wanted, and that's what they did. So that's not the country that we want to be. We don't want to give some despots and dictators carte blanche to do whatever they want. They need to have some accountability, and we need to create some type of a policy that would be good for the American people, but would also allow people that are going to be murdered and have their lives destroyed, that we need to give them opportunities here too. There needs to be a balance, and we need to do the right thing. And we all know what the right thing is. And we look at our hearts, and we know we have to open our borders to a certain extent we need to keep America safe, but we also need to be the benevolent uncle to the rest of the world, as we always have been.
Thank you. Are you worried about the current situation? Are you worried about the current tensions in this country and the upcoming election?
The election, I don't want to get the politics, but I don't want the people that have to do what you can, what they want to vote. This is the only thing is they have to go to vote.
That is important.
That's important.
I mean, we do have you're absolutely right, Jenny. We have a representative democracy. It is not true democracy, but we have a representative democracy. And the best thing we can do right now is to vote and show our support for the candidates that we believe in.
Right.
And that's all we can do right now is vote. I mean, insurrections and violence is not going to change anything. Peaceful protests will. Peaceful protests helped things in the 1960s, helped alleviate the Vietnam War. It spurred Rick Nixon to say, wow, even though other presidencies kept adding and adding and adding troops to Vietnam, he saw with the anger of the people that we needed to get out of Vietnam, and that's what he did. And we don't have to sit silent, but we need to show the world that we're peaceful and not to incite violence and to steal from stores and to do that type of thing. That's not going to accomplish anything. It actually minimizes the cause. So we have to do the right thing. As we said earlier, doing the right thing is always going to be the right thing. And regardless of if we're in 1968, 1945, 2020, we know what the right thing is. And inciting violence is never the right thing.
With this, and as we're rounding around to the end of the question and answer period, I have a couple of more questions that I'd like to ask you. One of them is about Pittsburgh. You know, that you are in Pittsburgh now, and you know, what is the community like today? How is the community there healing from the violence of a couple of years ago?
Yeah, do you have an opinion about what happened?
The violence all over every place, all over the world, you know. I don't know what to tell you if they like the Jews or not, but something.
There's, as we all know, there's more anti-Semitic incidents than there ever has been. They've, you know, that's an objective measure.
That's all it is.
And I would say in Pittsburgh, it's a wonderful community. It's like living
nice
in the
people,
1960s, yes, where people still live, like many Jewish people have moved out to the suburbs and other communities, but in Pittsburgh, they've stayed in the city. And we love Pittsburgh, and it is a very vibrant community. The Tree of Life is only a few blocks from our home. And Daddy actually was praying in synagogue during the shooting. And I was actually at the JCC, you know, near the JCC. And I went over there to see if there's any, when I heard if something was going on, I actually drove over there thinking I had in my head, I had heard incorrectly that there had been some baby naming. And so I thought, wow, maybe people were meandering around the streets and they needed a ride back or they needed some help. So I drove over there and they did not let anyone in. They had already barricaded the Tree of Life synagogue. And so then the next thing I did is I knew Daddy was safe in the synagogue, or I thought at least he was. So then I drove over to the synagogue, and they did not know at that time that what was going on.
The rabbi told us 11 o'clock.
Right, and then I told the rabbi, and they barely let us in, and we had to wait. We did not know if there was going to be more shooters. We did not know anything else about it. All we knew was that, and I knew some of the people that had died, and Pittsburgh is such a small community that there's less than 6 degrees of separation. So yes, we knew people. We were at that synagogue maybe a month before for a baby naming, and it was very, very sad. And the Pittsburgh community has healed from it. They won't ever forget it. The synagogue still has a fence around it, and I don't believe it hasn't been changed to that degree. Eventually they're going to do something with it, but it certainly brought a shockwave to the community, because everybody in Squirrel Hill, they walk around, you feel safe, the kids feel safe, you let them go on Murray Avenue and Forbes Avenue, and they walk around, and it really does feel like the 1960s. You don't have to have a car, your kids don't even have to learn to drive if you don't want to, and until they're 17 or 18. And it was like a little shtetl, which is like a little village, and it's a lovely place to live. And it did throw people back into a really sad reality that we are not sheltered from this, and we're just not sheltered any more than any place else.
As a final question at the end of this Q&A, I'd just like to ask, because we are at this moment when future generations won't have a chance to hear directly from survivors of the Holocaust, what would you tell future generations? If there's one thing that you want to pass on to next generations, what would it be?
You have to live your life. I know you can change it. If you're a person, you have in your life something in your mind, you can't change it because you know what it is. You've got to be honest to people. You got to do honest business. You got to be honest to the family. You got to be honest to your children. And you got to be living like that wherever you go and things. And you got to live there. One day I can tell you, I was in business, but I never went to court either. You got to be nice. You got to be living, and the world will live with you. You know, that's it. There's different people. Like I say a long time ago, there's you get all. I told the kids a long time ago. There's different fish in every lake, good ones and bad ones. So it's different people like that. But you have to live with it, and always believe in Hashem, a God, and that's all. I can tell. And that's I do my life like that. How old I am, 79 years old. So.
No, we all know he's 95, but he looks 79.
Good try.
It was a good try, yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your conversation, for answering all of these questions. I know we didn't get to everybody, and I'm sorry for that, but we've had a great deal of lively questions, and I hope I tried to cluster at least the questions that came in great numbers. I'd like to wrap up with many thanks to Oscar and Lee for talking with us this evening. It means a great deal to all of us here, the students, educators, members of the community, the planning committee, and to me. Thank you for all of your questions and for being here. I'll now turn the floor back over to Sarah Powley, but before I do, please allow me to extend special thanks to her for her tireless efforts in bringing this event into being. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you. And thank you, Lee and Oscar, for sharing your story with us tonight. It is so powerful and so moving, and I am grateful that we were all able to hear it tonight. And to our audience, thank you for joining us. And we want to recognize our sponsors and the individual donors who made this program possible. All of the committee members worked so hard on this event in so many ways. You only saw a couple of us, but all of these people worked in many capacities to make this event happen. Especially thank you to Joe Sykos, Amber Nickel, and Ephraim Fischbach for working behind the scenes to create this, our first virtual event. Thank you again for attending the 39th Annual Greater Lafayette Holocaust Remembrance Conference. Good evening.
Shir Hamalos v'mamakim kurasichu adoshem shema b'koili tiyene ozre kashivos lakol tachnino im avoinos tishmoyo adoino miyamoy ki imchu aslicho amad devure kivisi adoino kifste nafshi valedvura hercholti nafshi ladoino mishoimim laboika shoimim laboika yachal yisrael Hier no aan geset, waar bij een mooi verdis, waar hoe jifte es Yisrael met kol avanoisov.